Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
They're not going to pick up anything else. You can't detect the alpha emissions from a DE round if you're greater than a half inch away from it. And the beta emissions if you're greater than 4 to 6 inches away from it. However, when this stuff explodes, detonates, burns, whatever, it creates a fine dust that goes right through all known respiratory protection, all through known skin protection, and gets into the body and devastates the body. Just simple as that.
And you did the studies. I mean, it gets into the lungs, but even, I mean, I've got the Federal Mining Commission and others in the 60s when they were mining all this, saying how deadly just tiny amounts of uranium were in the rock and how it was killing all the miners, even though they had breathing apparatus. And I mean, we're talking about thousands of times stronger here when it's been purified. And of course, I've seen you cover, and I've read the report myself. What was it, a 1946 report?
1943.
What was the report where they, I guess I saw another 46 report mentioned then, where they first coined the term dirty bomb, and the U.S. government wanted to drop it on German cities but decided it would hurt our troops when they came in, and then they talked about this DU gas. Can you talk about that?
Well, what we had was back in 1943, the S1 Commission told the General and Manhattan Project, Leslie Groves, to use your radioactive materials, okay, to contaminate air, water, and soil and cause all the health problems. Back in 1943, we didn't have fissionable materials because we hardly had any reactors. Okay, so this is all radioactive material, so it's real simple. And so that was the original dirty bomb directive, which we continue to do, and we're doing dirty bombs all over and giving them to our friends. So what we've got is just a nightmare. Now, back, when we're doing all this research and putting our reports out, trying to get it stopped, we found out real clearly that you can't clean it up once you use it. There is no effective medical care. Now, within the Department of Defense, they'll tell the public and tell the military personnel that there's no problems or anything, okay, from uranium emissions exposure to contamination. However, the orders are out there mandating thorough medical care within 24 hours of exposure. The Army regulations require complete thorough environmental remediation. The Army regulations and procedures require that everybody goes anywhere near it within 50 meters wear full respiratory and skin protection. And then when you get into the briefings that have been given to the senior leadership at the Pentagon, all the way to the White House by Colonel J. Edgar Wakayama, who was, like the top dog on test and evaluation. Quote, cell damage and cancer. Lung cancer is well documented. Continues on. The beta particle hazards the skin, lens of the eye. Well, yeah, hey, I've got radiation cataracts and my vision is messed up, and the surgery is very dangerous. It took 2 hours just to fix one eye, and they thought 30 minutes was going to be it. We go on and we look at the stuff continuously. Heavy metal like lead, target organ is the kidney and the bone, what's far greater. Cultured human stem bone cell line with DU is transformed. The cells become carcinogenic. Urine samples containing uranium are mutagenic by the Ames test. This is the internal briefings. I mean, just continuously on, all of the hazards, the radiation limits, wounding by
that's
shrapnel.
my point. Is I've read all the documents working on Endgame, and interviewed you over the years, and I've seen the Army training films that you helped put together. They admit, just 20 years ago, they said this is deadly. This is only used if the Russians are overrunning us in Europe. This stuff is never to be used unless we're in all-out, already nuclear war, and it's a last weapon. And then suddenly they just said, you know what, we're telling the public it's good for you, and that's the end of it. Why did they have that? They had some morals before. When did this psychopathic mindset come into effect?
Well, what I learned about it was in March of 1991. As I was getting ready to start the cleanup of all the friendly fire, uranium weapons, friendly fire, Bradleys and Abrams tanks during Desert Storm, they handed me two memorandum, and you've seen these. One is called the Los Alamos Memorandum, written by a U.S. Marine Corps Colonel, Michael Zine. And it was very clear. We know there are serious adverse health and environmental effects, therefore lie in your reports so we can sustain the use, maintain proponency, and uranium weapons never become politically unacceptable. That one was very clear. Lie, and I'm going, not going to happen, guys. At the same time, I get another memorandum from the Defense Nuclear Agency, and, the head guys on the experts on bombs, and Colonel Lyle said, this stuff's not only a health hazard, it's a serious health hazard. We got to think about all of the contamination, air, water, soil, cleanup, and the whole mess. And so we've got one thing saying, this stuff's so dangerous, it's incredible, and the other one says, ignore the dangers. Then when we got to December of 1992, we had put all the reports together, and finally the Assistant Secretary of the Army, Walker, ordered us to do a study. And this was at the U.S. Army Environmental Policy Institute and Serial Research Lab, co-located here at the University of Illinois. And guess where? I went on loan from the University of Illinois over there to do this. You have to understand, whenever they have a problem, they call. I'm tired of being a jack-in-the-box because they don't want the problem solved. They just want smoke and mirrors. And we were directly ordered to figure out ways to reduce the toxicity of uranium emissions. That's impossible. And then we were ordered to figure out how to clean it all up. Well, that I did.
They wanted to cherry-pick your reports, as I saw them do it later, and act like, twist your reports and act like they found a way to make it safe.
Absolutely. And the same thing with the radiation exposures. We have to understand, when we look at the very specifics in the Army Technical Bulletin, the maximum allowable exposure for beta radiation is less than 0.05 milligram per hour. And we're looking at 100 counts per minute for alpha. What we learned and what we saw is we could never get down below thousands and 300 milligram per hour, no matter what we ever did, if you used the proper measurement techniques and proper equipment. As you mentioned, and this is really critical, standard radioactive equipment and standard techniques will not even find this stuff. You could have a pilot so dangerous and so great that it could take out an entire city, and you won't find it with a standard Geiger counter. And I think this is just brought home real recently because, and this is part of the new stuff we talked about, in the summer of 1991, as Desert Storm wound down, we were storing all of our equipment to get ready for what's now become Desert Storm 2, Operation Iraqi Freedom, whatever you want to call it. So we had all kinds of armor and equipment, weapons of all types, munitions of all types, stored at Camp Doha in Kuwait. Some of the chemical and biological weapons that we had recollected, from Iraq that we had given to them prior to Desert Storm was stored there also, and we kept blowing it all up. And what happened, a guy went to refuel a truck, and he didn't put a grounding strap on it, and he started a fire, static discharge. The whole place blew up and burned up. Well, I lost 3 of my guys, got killed there. I was back in the States. He immediately called and said, what do we do? And I said, well, follow the technical bulletin on fighting fires and cleaning up and get everybody to safety. Well, it never happened. And then part of our team flew over there. I stayed back here, and they went over to do it, and 3 guys got killed. Well, what happened here in the last few months is the Kuwaiti government, the Emirate of Kuwait, told the United States Department of Defense, you have to clean up all that contamination because there's so many medical and environmental problems. You have to clean up Camp Doha and get rid of it. So the United States got a contractor, and again, without training them, teaching them, or giving them equipment and everything, they dug up over 6,700 tons of contaminated soil and sand.
That was a death sentence for the people, the ones that do that.
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to understand, Dr. Michael Kilpatrick and Dr. Melissa McDermott don't care. They don't care. They totally don't care. And we've been around and around on this with them a million times. So just some truck
drivers and some guys from a construction company, guys that know how to run backhoes, they all just, hey, honey, I'm getting paid double time. I'm going over to Kuwait. And then they don't even tell you, hey, you're about to clean up something that's going to kill you deader than a hammer in a few years.
Yeah, well, we saw that. That's been documented with all this stuff. So anyhow, what happened is they dug up over 6,700 tons of contaminated soil, terrain, and everything else. They put it in ships, and they brought it back to Longview, Washington, the state of Washington, to a port. They're unloading it at Longview, Washington, put it into rail cars, and they're transporting 6,700 tons of contaminated sand and soil with radiological, chemical, biological, hazardous materials, conventional munitions contamination, plus all the insects, the bugs, and the microbes from the Middle East to Boise, Idaho for burial.
Which, by the way, again, all these environmental rules are only for us, the public. It's not for the government. They dump nuclear reactors in the ocean. They dump toxic waste in the Delaware River, nerve gas killing every fish. That's mainstream news. They're shipping all this into the middle of the country. and they've got all sorts of horrible parasites and burrowing mites and and horrible varieties of spiders that make black widows look wonderful, don't they, Doug?
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, when you look at the stuff. So anyhow, this has all been brought in, and so we tried to stop it. We said, wait a minute, you can't do this. Well, you know, again, as I said, they can violate the laws with immunity. Well, recently, the governor for Idaho said, oh, there's no problem. We took a Geiger counter outside the containers of train cars, and we didn't measure any radioactivity. I mean, how stupid do you get? And how stupid can anybody get? So now the United States government, Department of Defense, Dr. Michael Kilpatrick and all of them and the generals have said uranium emissions contamination poses no risk. However, we've dug up 6,700 tons of thoroughly contaminated stuff that's causing problems in Kuwait. We're shipping it back to the United States for burial at a isolated site. Well, not really isolated, but Boise, Idaho.